Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to get started in about another minute or so. We'll just give everybody an opportunity to file in. Really great to have everyone here today. Just give everybody one more minute here. We'll start at 12:31. Just give everybody one more minute to file in. Okay, let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking Pharma Buyer Preferences, Essential Insights for 2025 Planning. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So we are actually streaming this live on LinkedIn. We use a platform called StreamYard. It's very innovative, very simple to use. And just use the LinkedIn comments box for any questions that you have. And just so you know, this webinar is being recorded, and we will absolutely share the recording. If you have any questions or comments, enter them. We will answer them in real time, or at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so that's how you use the system. Very simple. So my name is Dario Priolo, and my company is called JK Research. I'm the publisher of the Selling to Pharma newsletter on LinkedIn. I know a number of you are subscribers, and I really appreciate that. If you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, you can just go to LinkedIn and type in my name, Dario Priolo, and we can link. It'd be great. And just a little bit about myself. I have about 25 years of experience as a chief marketing officer. I specialize in high-value, complex business-to-business sales. Lots of work in, again, very high-ticket transactions. Lots of work in consulting, professional services, technology, life sciences. That's really my wheelhouse, where I've spent most of my career. And I've been involved in about 13 M&A transactions. So either selling to private equity or buying as part of a private equity-owned firm. Also strategic. So I work with my clients to help them find strategic buyers and strategic investors. And about 10 years ago, I just hung a shingle and started my own consulting practice. And with my expertise as a marketer and an M&A, I position myself as a growth and exit advisor, oftentimes working with founders of professional services firms who ultimately want to exit the business and find a buyer. Also, as a fractional CMO, doing a lot of that work right now in this industry, and also as a sales trainer. And these are the types of companies that I work for. So I have a tremendous amount of experience working with companies that sell into pharma. Right now, virtually all of my clients do this. So you can see here the companies that they are selling to: big pharma, small, mid-sized pharma, biotech, med device. I'm not actually selling to the pharma company. I am working with my clients who are either a vendor or a provider of services, products to pharma. However, I am working with some biotech companies now as well. So that's been a bit of an interesting change for me. But these biotechs are also selling into pharma. So that's really the nuance of my business here. And that's why, again, as the people who are on this webinar, most likely you are running a company, you're the CEO of a company that sells some sort of product or service or solution into pharma, biotech, or med device. And if that's you, then I think you're going to really get a lot out of this webinar. I'm also really excited to add a co-presenter. This is Ed McCarthy, who I'm very pleased to introduce to you. Hey, Ed, do you want to just say hello?
Hey, Dario, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you asking me to be part of this.
Thank you. So Ed and I have been working together. Ed's been my client since probably March. And Ed runs a company called Echelon Performance. Ed, do you want to just maybe explain a little bit about what Echelon does and who you serve?
Yeah, well, I think we're a perfect match because we work in the same space that you do. Our clients are all, small, medium, large size life sciences organizations. We work a lot in biopharma, the pharmaceutical industry. And our focus is really on enhancing performance, identifying skills and behaviors, traits that top performing first-line representatives, first-line managers, second-line managers demonstrate, and then helping organizations rally resources and learning around those skills and behaviors.
Yeah, and Ed is an absolute expert in this. He's been at it for 20 some odd years in practice. And, before that, obviously, kind of working for pharma companies and whatnot. And it's just been a great relationship. And what we'll do here is we kind of talk through some of the trends and issues. We'll illustrate some of them and how we brought some of them to life in Ed's business and some of the impact that we've made.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that. I really am.
Great. So I just want to start talking about the survey that we did. So again, what's always been really important to me as the CMO of a B2B company, one that sells high value solutions, is really understanding our buyers. Understanding that buyer is just absolutely 100% essential to being successful. And not only do we want to, kind of understand, who they are and kind of, the segmentation, but we also want to understand how they make buying decisions. So that's a really, really important aspect here of how I create my solutions and work with my clients. We want to start from the buyer and almost work backwards to make sure that whatever we do, we are aligned with the buyer. So in terms of this survey, this is something that I conducted over the latter part of the summer, and it was really a 10-question survey, and the questions really went to get at what were their most important issues in 2025. So we surveyed pharmaceutical executives. We want to understand what are the most important issues, where are they getting their information, what factors influence their buying decisions, and what was their buying process. So again, 10 questions, we got 97 responses. And then from there, we had 23 follow-up interviews. And the people who we surveyed and interviewed, they were commercial leaders, regulatory leaders, and clinical leaders. And they worked in big pharma, small, mid-sized pharma, biotech, and med device. Okay, so what we'll do first is we will debrief you on the results of the survey and the research. And then we'll start to talk about what that means for 2025 strategy, planning, and budgeting. So just in terms of, again, we asked about the big issues that are influencing whatever buyer behavior in their organizations. And these were really the 5 that came out. They came out both in the survey, and there was a lot of color that was placed around them when we did the follow-up interviews. But basically, the first one, pricing pressures and regulatory changes. The Inflation Reduction Act has had a huge impact on that. We're in election year. We have an election a little more than a month away, and we're not going to get political here. But the pricing pressures are real and the regulatory changes are real. Second is around increasing consolidation and complexity of IDNs. The IDNs are really the buyers, right? The independent distribution networks. These are who the pharmaceutical companies are selling to, and again, it's been a huge change, lots of consolidation, and with that becomes new pressure around demonstrating value beyond clinical efficacy and providing real world evidence. This gets back to both the Inflation Reduction Act and how these IDNs are reimbursed for whatever a number of the therapies and treatments that they provide. Then we have all of that is just really influencing go-to-market strategies and skill sets. So that's changing in a big way across the biopharma industry. And finally, opportunities in AI and digital transformation. I mean, that's AI obviously is a very, very big thing. and it's absolutely having a huge impact. So Ed, just based on these, any surprises from your perspective, Ed, in terms of what we learned in the survey and what you're seeing boots on the ground?
No, I think when you're sharing these results, it really shows the power of the survey that you did, because a lot of the times that we're engaging with clients, these are the things that we're talking about: pricing pressures, the consolidation, the impact of IDNs on physician decision making, and that all boils up to us on bullet number 4, which all of these things change go-to-market strategies, sales team models, skill sets. So it's been very helpful to us to have an asset like you who can help us stay informed on the bigger changes in the marketplace, because then we can talk about why these things are impacting sales teams, coaching, and those sorts of things.
Cool. So let's drill into some of the individual questions here. So the first one that we'll drill into is around where buyers get information. So these are pharma buyers, people in pharmaceutical companies that are buying services. And where do they get their information from? Well, it's really interesting that LinkedIn actually came up as the top source. So, things like email newsletters, peers and colleagues, they're still important, vendor websites, conferences, industry publications, but it's really been pretty incredible how LinkedIn has emerged as a really, really important channel. Ed, any color you want to maybe, add to this?
I think you and I were talking the other day about LinkedIn, and I'm always amazed that with all the changes in social media over the last 20 to 25 years, even, things have come and gone, different browsers have come and gone, all these things have come and gone. LinkedIn is still number 1. And I think it's a real testimony to their ability and the ability of the platform to change and grow with services to customers. So I was shocked that LinkedIn was number 1, but then I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, LinkedIn is almost like an information aggregator. So if you think about it, if a company puts out an email newsletter, oftentimes they'll post it on LinkedIn. Your peers and colleagues are on LinkedIn, and they're kind of, whatever, just casually perusing and maybe sharing articles. Vendors, they're on LinkedIn, whatever, promoting their services, conferences, right? Every time there's a conference, there's obviously activity on LinkedIn to promote it, and even industry publications. So it's funny when we did the interviews. LinkedIn, it's not always a place where people are going to get their PhD level research, right? It's not a substitute for peer-reviewed academic journals. But in terms of just news around, what's happening in the industry, what's happening in my competitors, what's happening, whatever, amongst, my professional network, it's really proving to be a very important channel.
Yeah, and you hear all the time, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Instagram, I ditched TikTok, but I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done the same thing. So next is around factors influencing selection decisions in pharma. So we had asked these pharma buyers, what really drives your selection process, right? Like, at the end of the day, are you price sensitive? Like, what is it that really tips the scale in the favor of, one vendor over another? And again, I don't know, Ed, whether this is surprising or not, but relationships were the number 1 factor. So, pharma is still a very relationship-driven business.
It is, and I think it always will be. And we'll talk more about this later, but the role of trust and the role of risk in decision making, that has really, really come into the forefront in terms of agencies like ours. People want to work with people who have done well by them in the past, even if it was 15 years ago. People remember people who work hard for them. And I think that, there's no surprise to me that relationships is number 1.
Yeah, obviously compliance and regulatory is still huge. Yeah. Thought leadership. Again, these are whatever, smart people, right? Lots of PhDs, highly educated, and they value that. But yeah, it's interesting. Pricing was second last. So it just goes to show. At the end of the day, when you have a relationship, then it's kind of like, oh, you know what? Like we're willing to place a premium on that.
Yeah.
Next is around just comparing pharma practices to SaaS. So I do a lot of work in technology. My 2 industries I serve primarily are, SaaS technology, enterprise technology, and the biopharma services industry. And what's really interesting here is that when you look at sort of the perceived effectiveness of tactics in SaaS and in pharma, because I'm doing this similar type of research in other industries as well, is that they're really different. They're really different. The things that conceivably work in SaaS, like cold emailing, cold calling, social media, online ads, that just doesn't work as well in pharma. I mean, at least from the perception of the buyer. So industry relationships, thought leadership, that still is really, really crucial. And why this is so important is that, again, we're on LinkedIn, we're streaming this on LinkedIn. We talk about how important LinkedIn is. Well, there are a lot of marketers on LinkedIn. A lot of those marketers are SaaS marketers, right? And you'll see a lot about, like cold email this, or, cold calling that, and robo dialers and all of these different solutions. Just don't be overly influenced by those. I think it really gets back to you have to understand your buyer and what matters to them. And in pharma, it's just a different animal. And and I've done this for clients. We've done cold emailing campaigns and cold calling campaigns, and unfortunately, it just doesn't work.
No.
So we just get back to, again, right at it being.
Well, Dario, does it surprise you that industry relationships are almost a, I don't want to say a non-factor, but it's the least impactful factor in the SaaS field?
Yeah, it's more of, I think, a transactional type of solution. I mean, yeah, it like professional services might be different, but SaaS, where you're literally buying like a login, like when I bought my LinkedIn subscription, right? It's kind of like like I bought it because I knew it had features that I needed. I didn't know my rep, right? Now, of course, like I bought Salesforce before, and again, like I didn't know the rep that I was buying it from. Now, over time, you build a relationship, but yeah, it's interesting. Just that relationship did not have as much of an influence on my decision to buy. It was maybe more the features and functionality, and maybe the brand, right, of the company that I was buying it from, as opposed to the individual.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. So next is around just risk aversion, and so pharma buyers, again, it's a regulated industry, so surprisingly, they're risk averse. But I think they've gotten even more risk averse. At least that's what the data is telling us. And probably, again, there are all sorts of things that we've heard, but when you think back to that slide on, what's really sort of, driving initiatives, things like, pricing pressures, the Inflation Reduction Act, that's really causing a lot of belt tightening in the industry. And, there certainly have been layoffs that have been announced. And, with that, I think it just, people just want to be even more careful about what they're doing. Ed, any thoughts on that?
No, I see it. I'm not surprised that it has grown even in the last 12 months.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I think what it means is that they're not going to take a leap of faith. Right now, if you got a relationship with them, and if you're a thought leader, then you've got a chance. If whatever, you've got all your compliance ducks in a row, then you got a shot. But if they're probably not going to take a shot on you unless you've got some sort of credibility kind of standing behind you.
Yeah.
Then we get into buying committees, and this is really fascinating. But again, it kind of harkens back to some of the risk aversion. And in pharma, there's a lot of group buying, and this is something that's really, really important to understand as vendors. But even solutions under $10,000 will have an average of 3 people on a buying committee. I mean, that's but you think about it, you've got probably got regulatory, maybe you have like technical, you've got different sort of due diligence checks that need to be sort of signed off on, right, before they're willing to whatever. Give you a contract.
I think that's a really a powerful statistic right there. And I'll tell you, it's almost a progression, because the relationship will get you the email or the phone call. Dario, I'd like to talk to you about this. And then you can talk about your product expertise. And that helps the person that is bringing you into an organization position you within the organization. But once the relationship has been rekindled or reestablished, and once the thought leadership has been established, you can go right from a call with 1 or 2 people to a call with 8 or 10.
Yeah.
Right. Because now those 1 or 2 people that have been shepherding the process need those other lines of sight on the project, on you, on your thought leadership, whatever it might be. So it quickly escalates from, Dario is my guy, to everybody else check out Dario, because we need to spread the risk around.
Yep, absolutely. And you'll see here in a bit, what that means to you as somebody who's selling into the industry. Yeah. Finally here, just again, we talked a little bit about this, but personal brand versus company brand for pharma buyers. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's a huge industry that serves pharma, but it's not like they're everyday brand names. And at the end of the day, I mean, your personal brand means a lot. Your personal brand, especially, whatever, if you're a consultant or run a consulting firm, if you're the CEO of a consulting firm like Ed, like, it means the personal brand is really what people are betting on. Now, it doesn't mean the company brand can be bad, but at the end of the day, I think the scales are tipped in terms of the personal brand.
Yeah.
Ed?
No, I agree. I didn't realize how true this was until around March when you and I started to work. The resonance that your personal name and brand has can really outshine what you're doing as an organization.
Big time.
Yeah.
Great. So just summarizing here. So again, the big sort of findings from the survey. So the pharma industry resists typical SaaS marketing. Cultivating credibility, trust, and relationships is huge. LinkedIn is an essential marketing platform. Pharma buyers are extremely cautious and expect buying by committee. And any kind of surprises here? Anything you want to add or comment on?
Being in the mix of it, for so long, I don't necessarily find a lot of this surprising, but I find what I have seen and what I have learned. The first one is a little bit surprising to me, just in terms of how resistant the pharma industry is to a lot of the traditional marketing approaches, like you were talking about, cold calling, online ads, those types of things. It just bounces right off.
Yeah.
That was a hard lesson learned and a costly lesson learned. I'll say that. Yeah.
I mean, and the bottom line is you're going to see here. I mean, there's no quick fix, right? I mean, this requires just whatever good marketing strategy, good brand strategy, persistent effort to build awareness and credibility, and have a strong value proposition. That's all. You're solving a problem for somebody. But we'll get into all of that. So again, here are the implications for 2025 strategy and planning. I won't read each of these off here, but we will drill into each one of them. So the first is just really protecting your base and leveraging your network. And the one thing that I see across my client base, and I know you've seen it, I mean, getting net new clients is difficult. Okay, it's difficult, it's time consuming, it's costly. So when you have them, you have to make sure that you hang on to them and you grow them. Super important here. There's all sorts of data out there, but it costs 5 to 25 times more to acquire a new customer than it does to retain an existing one. And and it's a lot more fun usually to try to retain an existing one than to find a new one. So just keep that in mind here as we kind of go through some of these recommendations. And then secondly, again, related to that is don't neglect your personal or professional network. So this was a situation when Ed and I first started working together. The first step was that we created a strategy. We went and refreshed his value proposition and his go-to-market strategy. We did an analysis of Ed's networks in his email database. And although Ed's network wasn't particularly large, and we'll get into that, and there were a lot of people in his network that were not ever really going to buy from him, he still had a few hundred of them that were potentially a match to his ideal customer profile. So what we did what was called a re-engagement campaign. So literally it is reaching back out to people who are in your network, you're connected to them. Oftentimes you've either worked with them in the past, maybe they were a client, maybe they were a part of a client organization that was whatever at arm's length or related to a solution that you were delivering, but at some point like you had enough of at least familiarity with somebody that you linked on LinkedIn. And Ed, remember when we did this and we went back out and we just reconnected with everybody, just simple, hey, it's been a while since we last connected, let's catch up. There are a lot of interesting things happening in my world. I mean, Ed, just kind of talk about that experience a little bit.
It's hard to really put into words. As I was saying, we had tried a lot of different things over the years, but when you helped us develop that sort of reach out campaign to the people who were in our network and met our ideal customer profile, I think I texted you the first day and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dario, I got, I think it was 2 or 3 responses. And that's probably more than I had ever gotten from anything else. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the week, I think it was up to 20 or 25. People were just like, oh my gosh, it's so good to hear from you. You're doing some really cool stuff. Can we get together? So just that personal touch delivered, worded the right way to the right person. I was literally blown away by just that, it's your second step here, but just to take that one step was incredibly powerful. And as you know, behind the scenes has actually generated quite a bout of buzz and energy on the sales cycle. So
absolutely.
amazing. Yeah.
And then I think what else is really useful when you go back and when you re-engage your personal network is that even just to catch up for 30 minutes is that there's a tremendous amount that you learn in those conversations, right, Ed?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, to your point, you had said something earlier about, 10 or 15 years ago and re-engaging. Some of these people have moved roles, companies 2 or 3 times during that time period. So what you can learn about them, what their focus is now, new accreditations that they have, right? They've grown over that time. We've grown as an organization over that time, clearly. And then just kind of refinding your footing around those things that you have in common, those shared passions, and what are the opportunities that we might be able to do something together again.
Yeah, and so one of the tools that I have here on the right hand side, I call it a key account SWOT analysis. So that's just a tool that has some basic questions to enable you to gather, I think, really important information to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the health of an account. And I'd be more than happy to share that with you, after the webinar here. But again, as we go into strategy and planning for next year, think about just the insight, Ed, that you gleaned right from those conversations and how that is influencing some of the decisions that we're making.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about this in a bit, but the tools that you've provided our organization like this are almost invaluable. We as a consulting company, we work in training, performance, operations, and so forth. The fact that we had not really done a lot of the things that we recommend organizations do, that's on me. But for you to put this into our world and make it relevant to what we do every day is really powerful. And believe me, we're going to be using a lot of those forms between now and the end of the year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So with that, again, you think about really reconnecting with your existing base and getting great insights from that base. What it enables you to do is to really refine your ideal customer profile and your buying personas. As you go into 2025, I cannot stress just how important it is to really make sure that you have really accurate and well-defined ideal customer profiles and buyer personas. Everything you do in marketing, all of your success in marketing or lack of success starts from that foundation. And when you have it, it makes marketing so much more efficient and so much more effective. And when you don't have it, it really, creates some challenges for you. So, Ed, just, think about when we kind of took a look at your ideal customer profile and your buyer personas and maybe some of the things that we learned in the process of doing that.
Well, you touched on one of the biggest takeaways for me was that there were people, and my LinkedIn is, like I said, kind of my Facebook and everything else. But when it comes to it being used as a business tool, there were a lot of people in there that were not necessarily part of this strategy. So I think just being able to take a hard look at who's in there and what role they can play in the business growth strategy, that's a key first step there. But and we'll get into this a little bit later. There's a lot more insight available than we knew was in there. Like you have a few things up on the screen there, but there's a lot you can really learn if you take a time. And again, we've preached this for years. Take the time, go in, do some research, look at connections, and really start to put together what you think could be your sort of like your sales hypothesis. Go in and start to do some of that because the depth of information and the accuracy of that information is unmatched.
And that really is a good segue into next year, which is around creating your content strategy, right? So we talked about how, thought leadership is so critical to buyers. Well, it's critical, but it also has to be relevant. There's a lot of content out there, a lot of bad content. And, content is still crucially important to your marketing strategy. But at the end of the day, you want it to hit the mark with your buyer, and when you have that ideal customer profile defined, when you know the pain points that they're struggling with, their business cycle, then you can start to create that content strategy. So really understanding the specific challenges that your prospects are facing, any sort of novel insight that you could share to educate them and demonstrate your expertise, and at the same time showcasing your differentiators.
Yeah.
But for example, Ed, when you look at the topics that are up here that we've been writing about, like, gaining access, that was one. When we came out of the gate, we didn't really appreciate just how crucial that was until you had the conversations with your network peers.
Yeah. And those network and the peers that I was interviewing through that process, every year we do a series of interviews, just like what's going on in the industry. All of those connections were from the strategy. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling little cycle where you reach out and you have more conversations, and those conversations turn into content, turn into insights. We share those. It's really an iterative process that has proven to be really powerful.
And then with that, the other thing that when you're thinking about a content strategy is the timeliness of it. So again, Ed is, you're primarily selling solutions to sales leaders, to commercial leaders, and obviously most of them are on, whatever, it's a calendar year. It's in every quarter they've got, whatever, they've got a number that they're reporting out to. So what we've done is we kind of, in our mind, know their business cycle. And as a result of that, the content that we're putting out, we try to align with that.
Yeah, you really allowed us to be more dynamic with that, and I think one of the key things here that is underlying this conversation is that in the past, you've helped us be more consistent, but you've also helped us be relevant from the customers, our clients' perspective. Not everybody is excited about coaching and what makes great coaching or high performing representatives. But when you start to talk about it in the context of the changes as they see them, then it becomes a much more relevant conversation, right? So we're not just, doesn't feel so much like we're advocating or advertising. It really feels like we're having a conversation about issues that they're grappling with.
Yeah, and in this case, you can see up here, right now it's around, whatever, it's finishing the year strong and starting the year, fast.
Yeah.
So things like strategies for a strong Q4 push in pharma sales, right? Navigating year-end pressures, balancing short-term goals with long-term strategy. Like, these are the things that they're in strategy planning and budgeting mode right now. So when you can put content in front of them that whatever is aligned with what they're thinking about, what's top of mind, then there's a greater chance that they're going to read it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that, again, I think what we've done here is we just think about we talk about now your LinkedIn presence and your LinkedIn strategy, but the whole personal branding aspect of this. I mean, there's a reason why we have Ed's photo. There's a reason why, we call this, life sciences sales coaching strategies. None of that is by accident. It's all about, at the end of the day, we want Ed to be perceived as the absolute world leader in pharmaceutical sales coaching. If you've got a sales coaching issue, if you want to do sales coaching, Ed is the guy who you want to be talking to, because Ed is the world-renowned expert in it. And he is, but the world just probably didn't know about it.
That's the world's loss.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about, again, LinkedIn, it's an important channel, but optimizing your presence and your strategy. So the first thing really is around like your personal brand and your headline. You can see here, I mean, when you send somebody a connection request in LinkedIn, really that headline is the only thing that they see. So, it has a very important role in influencing somebody to accept that connection request. In this case, Ed, sales coach, sales training and coaching expert, pharma biotech med device industry specialist. So, it's incredible when, that's not what we originally had for Ed. And when it's something that iteratively we fine tune. But now Ed has about a 40% connection request rate. So, and what you'll see is that when you have a strong network of first degree connections in LinkedIn, there's all sorts of great things you can do. You can invite them you can contact them, you can message them, you can invite them to events. It's really, really important. Yeah. So again, just thinking through, again, it's the look, right? I mean, it's still surprising how many people don't even have like their logo in their LinkedIn header. let alone, whatever, like a decent description of their headline. I mean, there's just all sorts of low-hanging fruit. This is not difficult to do. It's just a matter of whatever, making it a priority and doing it.
Yeah.
And then the next two are really important. So network size and network quality are really, really crucial. I mean, especially a lot of you on here are consultants. As a consultant, really two things matter, right? I mean, you've got your expertise and you've got your network. If you've got those two things covered, then you're probably going to be in business for a long time. Life will be good. But if your network isn't big enough, and if you're not connected to enough of the right people, then you're going to be, significantly handicapped here. So when we first started working with Ed, I mean, he had about 1,500 connections, but only about 20% of those, 300 or so, matched his ideal customer profile. They weren't, so 1,200 were people who couldn't buy from him. And that's not the only reason why you create a network on LinkedIn. But, I mean, you only had 300 people, and we reached out to them and we got some traction, which was great. But now what we've done, this is 3 months down the road, we've got over 1,000 first degree LinkedIn connections. And every single one of those first degree connections matches Ed's ideal customer profile. So now, rather than 300, we've got 1,300 or 1,500 potential prospects, right? That we have, that we're connected to at a first degree in LinkedIn. And what that means is that we can message them, we can invite them to events. And the other really important thing is that when we publish, you see your feed. Well, most of what you see in your feed are from your first degree connections. Now you see a lot of other things that are promoted, but if you're not connected to somebody, there's a very low chance that they're going to see any content that you're putting out. And especially in the first 3 weeks to a month that you connect with somebody, that is a really important time, because LinkedIn, the way the LinkedIn algorithm works is that they will actually serve up more of your content to your new connections. So if you've got a regular posting cadence, like if you're posting 3 or 4 times a week, then they're absolutely going to see your posts in their feed. And it just further gives you the opportunity to build your brand, build name recognition, get your thought leadership in front of them, and position yourself as an asset that can help them at some point.
Yeah.
Ed, do you want to just talk about this a little bit?
I do. You had shared this data with me a while ago, and it took me a while to really see what the power was here. Because if you're an agency like ours, obviously, or for me as the head of the team, going from 1,500 to almost 2,500 connections is great, right? That's everything we've talked about so far really supports the importance of that growth. But when I sat down and I really looked at this and I did a quick math, if you think 20% of 1,500, that's about 300 people in my network fit our ideal customer profile. And 46, let's call it 50% of the current mix fits that profile. But that current mix is now almost 2,500, which means in a nutshell that nearly 100% of the people that have joined my network for the last 6 months or so fit that ideal customer profile. It's not just that growth of followers or connections. It's that absolute groundswell of people who are going to find our insights of interest. So I think, you could say, well, you doubled your network. It's way more than that. And we're having conversations now much more frequently with the people who really want to engage with us.
Yeah, it's really about being strategic about, your network building. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. And by the way, this doesn't happen without just, an immense focus, right? I mean, every week we are sending 200 connection requests, on Ed's behalf to people who match his ideal customer profile. Like, you have to be persistent. You have to know that, look, we are going to build this network here, and this network is going to fit this profile. And when we have it, that is an asset. And that's an asset, Ed, that you're going to carry with you, whatever. I mean, we could stop working tomorrow and you would still have that network. I mean, like that network, and it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO, whether you're a senior consultant, a partner, or a junior consultant. When you build that network, and if it's a relevant network, that is an asset that you take with you, whatever. If you change employers, well, that network is yours, right? I mean, the network is just so crucially important. And again, as you go into 2025, really be thinking about that.
Yeah, and I will say that the critical step is, yes, for me, this is very gratifying, but we're now doing it for each of our team members.
Yeah.
And because I want them to have the robust networks and the right kinds of conversations. To your point, if they leave tomorrow, God forbid, they can have that to take with them. But it's been so vitally important to our work that I want them to all have that.
Okay, so again, with that, I don't know, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and I'm not compensated by LinkedIn for any of this, but LinkedIn Sales Navigator is an absolutely essential tool for network building. I mean, if you want to put any sort of concerted effort into building your network strategically, you have to have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because you can, again, if you look at the search criteria here on the left, you can define your ideal customer profile. You can match the search criteria to your ideal customer profile, and then you can start to create lists of people who you want to connect to. So again, if you don't have Sales Navigator in your budget, something to seriously consider. It's just, I think, for strategic business development, especially professional services, it is so critically important. I don't know how we would ever do this without it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So now you think about what we've done is, we've defined our ideal customer profile. We've created content that aligns with their needs and timing. We've built up our network of ideal customer, first degree ideal customer profile prospects. Now we want to leverage that. We want to leverage the network and the content to start to drive demand. And again, none of this happens by accident. It doesn't happen passively. So it starts with, on the left is posting, right? We post 4 times a week together. That requires, creating content. We leverage AI to create content shamelessly, and the content is good. And it's really the relevance of the content. That's what's so unique about it. And the way that when you start really understanding how to work with these AI models is that everything that we do, and it's how I work with my clients, when we publish, everything that is published is aligned with Ed's point of view. So Ed is a thought leader on sales coaching in life sciences. There are a lot of different flavors of that potentially. Ed has his flavor of it. And what we have done is we have trained an AI model to create content based on Ed's point of view. And again, that is crucially important. We don't want to just be talking about, sales coaching. We want it to be Ed's approach to sales coaching. And Ed, tell us a little bit about that. Maybe the process that we use for content creation.
Well, the more that you talk about that, the more I think we really could quit tomorrow and just have AI take over our network. Maybe that's the solution, but it's not. I will say that I think one of the initial real connections between the two of us was me thinking about, okay, I hear about AI, I think about AI, I hear other people talk about AI. What is it really going to do for me, right? Is it stealing my ideas? And the way that you've laid it out for us in practical terms, I think was really the most important step. And then, you and I spent a lot of time talking up front about Echelon, about goals, objectives, thought leadership, all of those things that really are at the heart of our consultancy. And you were able to use AI to really bring those ideas to life. Because I think, I'll speak for myself, that for somebody who runs a consultancy, an agency like ours, the idea of doing all this is great. We're like, this makes total sense. But it's the ease with which you and the tools that you brought to us, like AI, have made this process that is the real game changer. You came back to me, I think we maybe spent a total of 3 or 4 hours on a Zoom, just collecting ideas, and we're able to generate, I don't even remember how many posts, ideas. It was just amazing. So I took a step back, and you think, well, they could never possibly capture the spirit of Echelon performance in AI. Well, they did. And I, for one, am really glad for it, because it has made this whole process a lot more seamless.
Yeah. I mean, a year ago, this would have been much more difficult to do.
Oh, yeah.
Now
so we're in our 19th year. We just this year catapulted all this because, in part, of that.
So again, on the left, you see, all the posts that we do. So we did a webinar. We did a webinar last week. We had 350 people register for it, 349. I mean, Ed, you've never been able to come close to that previously.
I think our high watermark before that was about 20. So
yeah. So again, and even if people don't show up, I mean, because let's face it, I mean, people register for webinars all the time, they don't show up. But the fact is, you're out promoting the webinar. You do the webinar. Some people show up. Some people are hot prospects because they show up. But then there's all the follow-up. You send the recording of the webinar. You send any kind of other call to action. And again, the webinar gives you a valid business reason, right? Like, I mean, this is kind of now where we are, quote, asking for the business. And we're doing it in a very subtle way. We're still providing a tremendous amount of value to our prospects in the marketplace. But now, again, like a lot of this has to do with the topic too. So, the webinar we did was Coaching RX, your prescription for biopharma sales success in 2025. Like this is all about, getting them to talk about their strategy and plan for next year, and is coaching a part of it? And it should be. So again, it's just given us a way to continuously try to, open that door and position the value of what Ed and his company does to, again, a very large and relevant audience. Yeah. Whew, okay. Rolling along here. So now we'll talk about, again, this will be quick, but adapting to complex buying community dynamics. Again, this is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And the beauty of Sales Navigator is that you can actually reconstruct a buying committee. So if you know who your champion is, the decision makers, the influencers, and maybe you don't even know who they are, but you can start with the person who you're working with, and you can look at you can find their boss and their boss's boss. You can find their peers, and you can reconstruct this org chart, kind of like the decision-making tree, if you will. So now you've got a much better idea of who potentially you need to, whatever influence, bring into the sale, or work through your champion kind of as a coach to help you get and influence these people. You want to go into these opportunities with your eyes wide open and not maybe get blindsided by somebody like, oh my God, I had no idea that, they had a regulatory person who was going to, come in and rain on our parade, right? I mean, you got to know that kind of, when you're in the heat of the battle, not sort of like at the last minute, so that you have an opportunity to prepare and deal with the situation.
Yeah. And I think it's we're talking more about these larger and larger buying committees. So somebody from compliance is probably going to be part of that conversation. Somebody from procurement might be part of the conversation. Now there's really no excuse to not know more about that person. There's no excuse to like, okay, I know this person is going to be involved. Help me understand what this person's priorities are, background, and so forth, the role in the decision. It is all right there.
And then finally, just addressing risk aversion in marketing and sales approaches. So just know that your pharma buyer is probably risk averse. And what that means to you is you just need to be prepared. You need to have all your backup, have everything organized, have all your ducks in a row, so that, inevitably when you get asked for something, you have it, right? And you have it and you have it in a way that is going to meet your needs, right? You've got sort of that success story. You've got the ROI study. You've got everything kind of in the can, as opposed to at the last minute where it's like, oh my God, I'm being asked for a reference and who do I go to, right? And you're scrambling, very disruptive. And then we have tools, for example, this is a tool that we created with Ed, which is, a coaching planning worksheet for 2025, where Ed and his team could literally take a client through step by step and almost build a business case in real time. That justified their investment in sales coaching. And then, your internal champion could take that to the CFO, right? Or to other stakeholders in the company that, whatever would want to probably sign off on this type of an investment.
Yeah, cool. Those are great tools. You did that for us, and you gave us another one that I thought our clients have raved about it. So those kinds of tools really do matter, helping that internal sales dynamic.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah.
So just recapping, the implications of 2025 strategy and planning: protect your base and engage your network. Again, refine your ideal customer profile and buying personas. Create that buyer-aligned content strategy. Again, that's around your thought leadership. Optimize your LinkedIn presence and strategy. leverage that network and content strategically to drive demand generation, adapt to complex buying community dynamics, and then address risk aversion in your sales and marketing approaches. So yeah, that's kind of it. Ed, any final sort of thoughts on the implications here?
The implications, I think, are. I'll state my implications with. I think a lot of organizations, a lot of agencies, a lot of consultancies like ours struggle with this, right? We tend to throw stuff at the wall, see what works, hire this firm, hire that firm. The way that you've been able to take this process and marry it around our business, so it feels more like a stepwise approach and very manageable approach. I haven't dedicated hours and hours to blog writing or any of these types of things. You've made it in such a way that it's digestible for me as a CEO to understand it, to execute it, and for the rest of our staff to really be part of it. So everything here, there's nothing here I would not highly recommend that organizations try to at least take the first steps on the end of this year, beginning of next year.
Cool. Yeah. So again, just in terms of, just an offer, there's a QR code here on the right. If you'd like, just schedule a 30-minute call, and I'm more than happy to, discuss this or anything else, walk you through it step by step. There's all my contact information. I'd be more than happy to spend, as much time as we need really to, help you develop a clear vision for next year and ways that we can positively impact it. Because it's not getting any easier, it's getting harder. And I think, with a good sort of clear strategy and plan and really some know-how around how to execute, you can do a lot of this. And it doesn't have to be, Ded's point, painful. It doesn't even really have to be that expensive. It just, has to be something that you commit to for the long haul.
Yes. Yeah.
So with that, yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say that initial consultation, take everything else off the table. That initial consultation, the 30 minutes that you and I spent together, and we had known each other before, but that was probably the most important half hour that I have invested in my business, because that led to a whole wellspring of strategies and effects. And it was mission critical. It completely rejuvenated things. So
awesome. That's great to hear. So with that, I know this platform, again, it's a little bit of a different approach, streaming this on LinkedIn. Let me know if you have any questions. Certainly be happy to address them. But if not, like I said, just feel free to reach out to me, email, if you want to text me, if you want to schedule a call. That QR code will take you to a Calendly link where you can schedule a 30-minute consultation, any of that. And we'll just give people a couple of minutes here. But Ed, kind of just upon reflection, anything maybe that, kind of going in that either has surprised you, or even questions maybe that you still have about, maybe as we go into next year, or just curious. Yeah.
I think, we've cleared a lot of hurdles along the way. Yep. And I think you and I need to have a conversation about how do you keep going with what you're going, but what are some of the other opportunities, right? We've done so much with LinkedIn and revitalizing the network and our messaging and so forth. How does that start to play into other things like product development, service offerings, those types of things? Because the marketing approach, that's what you're talking about, has helped us grow the business. But then you also have to continue to grow the business with, and adapt
innovate the business, right?
Yeah. So I think it's the next conversation about innovation, and that obviously leads to a whole new iteration of what we just talked about.
Right. Cool. Well, anyway, I just want to thank everybody for their time today. And like I said, please reach out with any questions, and I'd be more than happy to spend some time with you. And whatever, have an awesome, rest of the year, finish the year strong, and really, get your ducks in a row for next year. Okay. We have an election coming up. Again, the belt could continue to tighten among your client base, but that's no reason to be afraid. There's always, wherever there's change, there's opportunity. That's the way that I look at it. And there will be no shortage of opportunity, ever in this industry. It's a great place to be. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Dario.
Thanks, Ed.